It's true. Across the globe, women aren't as prosperous as men. Gender inequality is a pressing moral issue, but we forget it has massive economic implications. If you were to put all of the women who don't have access to formal financial services in one place, they would make up the third largest country in the world. That means an entire population without bank accounts, credit cards, or other tools you and I likely benefit from daily. Prosperity for women starts with inclusive policies, products, and people around the globe, and the investment to make it happen. Welcome to the Making Finance Work for Women podcast. My name is Sonia Kelly, and I lead Women's World Banking's proprietary research division. Join me as I speak with changemakers around the globe to deconstruct the social and economic exclusion women face. We'll discover new evidence together and drive action to accelerate women's economic empowerment. Because a leg up isn't a handout, it's a global game changer. Indeed. Welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Making Finance Work for Women podcast, now streaming on YouTube and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on YouTube, you'll be able to find additional insights and resources linked in the description of the video below. I'm the host of the show, Sonia Kelly, and I'm also the global head of the Women's World Banking Institute. Just a quick spoiler alert for today's show. At the end of our time together, I'm going to lead us through a small 2-minute guided meditation where you'll have the luxury of some space to think about your purpose at work. I promise it's worth staying until the end to hear it. Before we get started, I'd like to give a special shout out to the sponsor of the Making Finance Work for Women podcast, Ernst & Young LLP. EY is a global leader working across assurance, consulting, law, strategy, tax, and transactions. EY teams ask better questions to find new answers for the complex issues facing our world today. You can visit their website at ey.com to explore their latest insights and services. Now let's jump into the show. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of individual policymakers in creating innovation in women's financial inclusion. Oftentimes, we think about policy as something that's out there, and we don't think about the people that are behind policy. Now, policymakers are in the business of solving intractable challenges. And one intractable challenge we have in the financial inclusion space is the $1.7 trillion credit gap for women entrepreneurs. This is the gap between the amount of capital that women entrepreneurs need and the amount of capital they actually receive. $1.7 trillion. It's no wonder that while women are the majority of micro entrepreneurs, they don't end up growing to be small or medium-sized enterprises as fast as men do. So when you look at medium-sized entrepreneurs, they're majority men. Are you bored of these figures? This is our 20th episode, and I feel like I keep sharing figures like this. And things aren't really changing or haven't changed in the last 20 months. Look, sometimes I feel like we are having together the same conversations over and over again. And that's in part because the private sector doesn't solve these issues for women customers fast enough. Sometimes policymakers and regulators need to solve the challenges that the market doesn't naturally solve on its own. And solving challenges that seem intractable requires creativity and innovation. It requires individuals to bring their experience and their full selves to work. And that's why having diverse skill sets on a team, having a range of backgrounds and skills and experience creates higher performance. In fact, companies with higher gender diversity are 21% more likely to outperform their counterparts, according to a McKinsey study. So it's important to have a range of experiences represented on a team making decisions, and gender, background, and skill set all play a role. I want to offer one example of a diverse team that's solving a problem in a market that I've been looking at. In Nigeria, only 164,000 of Nigerians' 5 million investors were women as of 2023. This is a big problem. I think that works out to less than 1% 164,000 of 5 million investors are women. The stock exchange regulator and the stock exchange group in Nigeria were both appalled by this figure. And it's a reminder of why gender disaggregated data is important. So, together, the industry and regulator, both men and women professionals in these institutions, put forward an initiative called Equip Her. It included capacity building for thousands and thousands of prospective women investors of all levels. And 4 months later, only 4 months later, the number of women investors had increased by 12%. It's such a win. I just wrote up this case study with my colleagues, and I'm going to put the link to that case example in the chat in the YouTube if you're there. You can also just find it on our website. If you look at NGX, look that up in the search bar. Now, sometimes we talk about regulation and innovation as a balance. Like if there's less regulation, there can be more innovation. And I think we've actually had conversations about that on this podcast. I think that's absolutely the wrong way to think about it. Innovation and regulation must go hand in hand in order to effectively affect change. Effectively affect change. I've got to write that down. Now, the example of Nigeria is a great one to show this impact of the value of innovation and regulation together. And another person that I want to bring on and share with you, who is a great lived example of innovation and regulation coming together, is our guest. Our guest today is a policymaker rising star. She's someone who's worked in Fintech, who's been a strong industry voice, and who now serves in the Superintendency of Banks in her country. And we're actually stepping into Women's History Month as we come into March. And it feels so right to have a guest on our show who's a woman making history, working on innovation and financial inclusion at the Superintendency of Banks. Welcome, Inés Paez. Inés leads the Innovation and Financial Inclusion team at the Superintendency, focused on promoting initiatives related to digital financial services, promotion of financial inclusion, and behavioral economics interventions. Talk about innovative. She's an electronic and communications engineer with a master's degree in senior management and a postgraduate degree in corporate finance. She graduated from Stanford's LEAD Leadership and Innovation Program and Women's World Banking's and Oxford's Leadership Program for Regulators. She has specializations in fintech and regulatory innovation, as well as digital transformation and project management. Okay, that is a long intro. Welcome, Inés. Thank you for joining me.
Sonia, nice to meet you again, and thank you very much for the invitation. It is truly an honor for me to be here and sharing my experiences on your podcast. And I hope it will be useful for to those who listen to us today.
I think it will be. I mean, first, I just want to ask about your background and experience, because I just gave your long introduction, and that kind of shows why we brought you on the podcast, because you have such a wealth of experience. But I also wanted to ask, like, from your perspective, what's your origin story in terms of your inspiration to step into the fight for women's financial inclusion?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I have like a mix and match of all topics. And well, basically, my background is in telecommunications engineering. And let's say that my awareness of gender disparity, it's started very early since the university, because in my degree program, we were only three women there, and when I stepped into the workforce within a telco company in my country, I found myself the only woman in the floor for almost 1 year. After that, there were more to join, but that really opened my eyes. The gender gap was in some male-dominated industry as telecommunications, finance, and so others. And after a few years, I had a turning point because I got involved in a mobile money project that this telco company Orange they had launched in several countries in Africa. So I had the privilege of visiting Kenya and Tanzania. You know that they have these mobile wallets that are very successful over there, and I had the opportunity to see firsthand how mobile money are transforming lives over there. And actually, the success there, it's really incredible. But that's, for me, that was an important lesson at that moment, because financial inclusion doesn't have like one size fits all formula. And
Mhm.
actually, what was working in those countries didn't work in my country at that moment, because we didn't have the same regulation, we didn't have the same realities and the same challenges. So it took us, a few years to find out that. And from one project to other, I was deeping in how technology can drive financial services and financial inclusion. And then I spent few years working in fintech, in the fintech sector. And as you know now, I transitioned later to the banking supervisor, where I have been for the last 4 years. And now I'm focusing on trying to enable the financial inclusion and financial innovation. There are two areas that are really deeply connected, because I found out that through financial innovation, we can help to promote financial inclusion as well. But going back to your question regarding the gender in financial inclusion, that's something that I'm really passionate about, because, as you mentioned, women often navigate the financial system. They find maybe different obstacles that maybe means simply they don't face. And the data is there and it's clear. Uh, when woman is left behind, the economies lose enormous potential. So our focus should be in work on these disparities. And we need to see through a gender lens, trying to ensure that the policies and the innovation will actually work for everyone, not just for a majority. And part of my journey is connecting all these dots and trying that technology, regulation, and gender inclusion will work together, and trying to build a more inclusive financial ecosystem. And as we said in AFI, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, trying not to leave trying to leave no one behind. So that's the basic idea.
Yeah, I feel like if I could summarize your inspiration for being in the space that you are, I would say um, leaving women behind leaves potential on the table, because it sounds like that was the case for you in your own career, like as the only woman on the floor in your job when you first started out in the workforce. And it's also true of women customers in the economy. Like if women don't have financial services, if they're not engaging in the formal economy, it's leaving economic growth on the table. Like it's kind of lost potential. I wanted to ask about your country. There are a handful of countries like yours where the gender gap in financial inclusion has increased or had increased at the last time we measured. Nigeria is another example. I gave the example of Nigeria earlier today. You shared with me last year that the gender gap in financial inclusion in the DR grew from about 2% in 2019 to about 7% in 2023. What are the factors that are driving this expansion of the gender gap?
Yeah, that's really sad. And well, this increase can suggest that maybe there are certain barriers and yeah, definitely a disproportional issues affecting women access to financial services. And I cannot mention maybe one, but several factors that may contribute to this regression. Maybe we can mention in our country we have a lot of informality and the economic participation. Let's say there is a high percentage of women that work in the informal sector with they have an unpredictable income, and that's make it harder for them to meet let's say the traditional banking requirements, and even to trust in financial institutions sometimes. And as you mentioned, women, they dominate the micro enterprises, but while in the other side, men's are dominating small and medium size, and they grow over the time, but it's not the case for women sometimes.
Mm,
And we can mention as well the digital divide, because women still face more barriers to accessing and using financial services due to their lower digital literacy and the access that they have to the technology if we compare them with men. In our countries, we can mention as well the cultural and social norms. Sometimes women, they prioritize family financial needs over their personal decisions, and that's something that can limit their engagement with the financial products and services.
mm,
And additional, sometimes in our countries, the financial decision makings are still it's male dominated sometimes, um another
so
factor.
easy problems to solve. Really easy, simple problems.
Yeah, definitely. I can mention as well the access to credit,
Mm,
because women-owned businesses, they struggle to access to formal credit because they don't have, sometimes they lack of collateral, and they don't have this credit history. And I have to mention, because the period of this data that you bring, it's something historical, but we have to go back to the pandemic, because I
mm,
think the COVID, it was something disproportionate, the how it impacted women versus men. And I think it actually pushed back, the woman workforce for several reasons. And even though here the government launched some programs to support MSME, uh, precisely due to this informality that I already mentioned, women with micro enterprises, they were unable to access to this kind of governmental support, because most of those micro enterprises, they collapse due to the reduction of supply of credit, the reduction in the demand of the
mm,
services, their inability to adapt to the digital environment at that time. And I think we face a loss on a lot of employment, mostly for the women, that they have these small businesses, such as, let's mention, beauty salons, domestic workers, and hotel workers as well, among other examples.
mm. And this really emphasizes the point you made earlier, which was that some of the solutions that you saw in Africa, the mobile money solutions, we're not like they're not one size fits all solutions that you could just copy paste and bring to Dominican Republic. I think the challenges we see in every country are a different constellation of challenges. One thing that we talk a lot about at Women's World Banking is women are less likely to use mobile internet. Like in low and middle income countries, women are 15% less likely than men to use mobile internet. And there are still 785 million women who are still not using it. Another factor is access to mobile phones. That's not a problem necessarily for women in Dominican Republic, but it is a challenge for women in India, where women are less likely to have a smartphone, less likely to have a feature phone. And when it comes to interacting with their financial services on their phone, that just doesn't work. And so I think your understanding of the complexity of these challenges in your context is really important to being an innovator. And I want to come to, I promise I will ask my next question, which is with this constellation of challenges that you're facing, how are you and your team innovating to create solutions?
Well, as I mentioned, there are a lot of factors that are impacting the woman financial inclusion, and so we recognize that to address this gender gap, we need to, to do several initiatives, maybe not together, but in the long term, to fix or to try to reduce this gender gap. And back in 2022, we launched the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion. The vision is try to reduce the financial inclusion and the gender gap for 2030. And we have a lot of, as I mentioned, some initiative that we are working on. We are working on the trying to, as I mentioned, to connect the innovation and trying to enable the innovation in the banking sector. We are promoting the financial technology solutions. Actually, we launched a financial innovation hub together with the central bank and all the other superintendencies in our country, trying to, within all the solutions that we see over there, try to specifically address the financial needs for women, such as credit scoring models, and consider some, you know, that consider some informal income as well. We try as well to work on the inclusive credit and guarantee schemes, trying to explore the mechanisms that can help to reduce the risk of loans for women entrepreneurs, facilitating the access to financing, as well trying to do some regulatory change. And we are now working as well on the gender disaggregated data. Is very interesting project
Mm.
because that we are strengthening our data collection and the analysis to better understand the woman's financial behaviors and the barriers that they are facing as well, and that will help us when we will finalize this initiative, to allow us to design policies that are truly based on evidence. And as well, after that initiative, or as part of this initiative, we want to as well to help the financial institutions to develop savings and credit products that are really tailored to the woman's reality. And
Mm.
I think maybe all these initiatives together will help us work on this path.
Hmm. That's exciting. And congratulations on getting all of those things moving forward. I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned, which was tailoring products to women's experience. You have a behavioral economics background, and I wonder what some of the behavioral economics insights you have surfaced in your work that have helped design financial products women actually use and benefit from.
Yeah, well, actually, we create a behavioral economics unit within the Superintendency of Banks. I think I can say that it's the first one in the region. And
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yes, we really like this topic. And behavioral economics, it plays a crucial role in making financial products more accessible and appealing for women. And some of the tools and interventions that I can mention can be, for example, the commitment on savings mechanism,
Mm,
because when women often they prefer to have some structure. So when they have to save, they prefer to have some tools that they can lock some money for specific goals, like
mm,
education or health or different goals. And this will increase the effectiveness of the savings rates, actually.
mm. Wow.
Other tool is the social norm framing. Usually you tend to respond better if the message emphasize the security, the family well-being, and the long-term stability, because you're always thinking on security. I mean, when
Mm,
you have a family that you have to take care of, and they women usually prefer that, the security, uh, rather than high risk and high return investment. So, security is very important. Other thing, it's the default enrollment. So, for example, like automatic payroll deductions, for that's something that it seamlessly for women. They don't have to be thinking on when I have to do it or how much I have
Mhm.
to save. So it's something that is automatically, and all the thing that we find that it's very important, and mostly for woman lead MSME is the peer networking, because women are more likely to
Mm.
engage with financial product if they are recommended or endorsed within their social circle. So it's very important in order to leverage the financial education when you are working with community leaders that can boost the adoption of the products and services. And that's really, really important.
So you, the government, are actually creating space to generate these insights, and then you pass them along. Do you pass them along to the private sector so they can use them as they design products?
Yeah, kind of. We have some initiative, and then as we don't have, the a way to execute, we partner with some of the financial entities. We ask them to help to in order to do up some pilots, like
Hmm.
very control pilot, and we test the initiative. We see the results, and then if it's really if the impact is positive, then we expand it to the whole sector.
And now, a word from our sponsor. EY applauds Women's World Banking's 45-year legacy empowering women through financial inclusion. Together, we have a common vision to build a better financial services industry, one that is stronger, fairer, and more sustainable. Find out more on ey.com. That's amazing. And that's the perfect example of like government not getting in the way of innovation, but rather being the catalyst for innovation, which something we talked about at the beginning of like kind of in the intro. I think something that's really important to emphasize that regulation and policy and government initiatives can actually create innovation. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about gender diversity in leadership because it's something that you have experienced personally, kind of a lack of gender diversity in leadership and what it's meant. But also seems like something that you and your institution are really leaning into and increasing women in leadership, both in regulatory bodies and also in financial institutions. How does gender diversity affect financial inclusion outcomes from your experience?
Well, glad that you asked that question because that's really a critical point. Well, you already know that as well, but having women in leadership position, both I think in the regulatory bodies and as well in fintech companies, leads to better financial inclusion outcomes because you need the policy designs that really reflects the woman's needs. Diverse leadership actually brings diverse perspectives, and that's leading that in policies that really will consider gender specific barriers. And if you go to fintech companies and financial institutions in general that are led by women, though those are more likely to design products and services that really will serve to women. And when you see women in leadership roles, that will increase the trust among the female customers because
Mm.
makes them more likely to engage with the financial institution and with the fintech as well. And if we think in the on the barriers and how to overcome them, there are some few points that maybe we can mention. It's you have, for example, the gender bias in hiring and promotion women. It's
Mm.
something that we have to to be careful about, because women, we need a stronger mentorship, and we need this leadership. I think
woman needs to help other women to get into these leadership positions. And another thing it's that sometimes these fintech firms, they struggle to raise capital, and sometimes it's because there are often women founders.
Mhm.
So we need to encourage the gender lens investing for venture capitals and for other fundings, because that's crucial for women-led startups. And another thing, I think maybe it's for our countries, but it maybe can happen in other economies. It's sometimes the cultural norms and these work-life balance expectations. I think that's something that I remember, from the last year when I participate in the program. It's very difficult to achieve and maintain this work-life balance, and when you reach these some leadership positions, and I can tell you because I face this challenge myself every day, and we need to have more flexible policies and to have inclusive workplaces that can help retain women in leadership positions.
Yeah, that was an excellent summary. And one thing I noticed you didn't say was you didn't say, we need fewer men in leadership positions. You didn't say that because this isn't about reducing men's participation in leadership. It's about making space for everyone. And I think when you said more gender diverse teams create better policy outcomes, that was exactly it. Like the point is not to have a homogenous team of all women or a homogenous team of all men, but rather to have gender diversity represented. I want to end with a magic wand question, which is if you could wave a magic wand and make one change that would accelerate women's financial inclusion in the Dominican Republic, what would it be and why?
Mm, that's a difficult one, but if I had, well, you said a magic one, so I will try to ensure that every woman in Dominican Republic has a digital account linked to a digital ID and access to financial education program. I know you told me one change, but this is like a three-leg table. We need these three legs, and why? Because digital financial access is the foundation of the for economic empowerment, and I think that if women have a secure way to save, to receive payments, to access to credit directly in their mobile phone, this can build financial independence. They can invest in their businesses, and that will improve their family's well-being. And if you combine this with literacy, I think we will ensure that they will not only have access, but actually they will use financial services in ways that will drive long-term benefits. And I think that's what I will do with this magic one.
I love that. Well, you're an innovator, so you can probably invent a magic wand. And I love that in your magic wand scenario, you're not just talking about financial access and use. Like it's not just about the products that people have access to, but you talked about the outcomes that people receive and their financial well-being and creating a better life for themselves. And I love that you're a policymaker thinking about creating better lives for people in your country. Thank you so much for joining me, Inés.
Thank you. Well, we did it. I hope all these points are useful and inspiring for our audience. And the journey of financial inclusion, it's really exciting. So thank you for the invitation, Sonja.
Thanks. Now, for all of you who are listening, I hope you enjoyed that podcast, and I hope you took something from Inés's story that individual experience goes a long way to making people into the tools that are needed to solve big problems. Usually, I like to end the podcast with some suggestions of things that you can do for women's financial inclusion today. And instead of that, I wanted to offer you the gift of just 2 minutes of your time to think about your own purpose, maybe inspired by Inés's story, maybe thinking about your own journey in the context of where you are. Whatever you're doing right now, maybe you're taking a walk, maybe you're on public transportation, maybe you're just sitting at your desk. I would love for you to just take a second and check in with yourself. You can close your eyes if you want to, if that's helpful and it's not dangerous. Why don't we start by just taking a few breaths in and out? You can breathe in, you can breathe out, you can breathe in, you can breathe out. Think about how your body feels right now. Think about what your mind is wandering to, and then bring it back to my voice. I'd like to do an exercise with you so that you can think about your purpose. Now imagine that you're at a big party. Where is it? Picture the room. And the guests are your colleagues and your friends and your family and your community. You can picture people around you. Who is there with you? Make sure they're specific people. And the feeling you have at this party is that you're so happy just observing the party around you, observing all of these people in your life who mean something to you. And all of a sudden, maybe you discover that this is a party for you. Now, one by one, each person at this party, each colleague or friend or family or community member comes up to you and tells you what you have meant to them. Just take a second to picture that. What does each person tell you? The first person comes up to you and tells you what you meant to them. The second person comes up to you and tells you what you meant to them. Remember what they've told you. Make it specific. And when you're ready, you can come back to the awareness of your breath, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and breathing out. You can come back to the awareness of your environment. If you have time right now, I would encourage you to open your eyes and take out a pen and paper and maybe jot a few notes down. Sometimes we get stuck in the day-to-day of our lives and we forget what our purpose is. You're listening to this podcast because you care about women, or you care about financial inclusion, or you care about empowerment. And like Inés, you have a unique background and experience that can contribute to the world. So think about all of those things that people told you meant to them. What did you do for people in your life if you had a party that was just focused on you? And I would encourage you to try to lean into those things today, to get out of your day-to-day and just focus on that purpose. Maybe that would be encouraging for you today. If you found today's discussion valuable, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you use, to rate us, to share us with your friends or colleagues, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can even let me know what you thought about that exercise that we did together at the end. Did you find that valuable? Do you want more of that? Your feedback really matters to us, and it helps us bring you the content that resonates. So please stay engaged, stay informed, and I cannot wait to see where 2025 continues to bring our conversations.